some dangerous layers in the snowpack. So it's yeah, I could hear it from my house all day long. So
Keep up the good work, but it scared the hell out of the group I was with.
that's good. It's the full package experience that way. Just seeing if Rick, I know Rick will be calling in and then joining us by camera. So seeing if I see his phone number. Or Rick, if you've made it and you can unmute, good to know you're here. Give it just a second longer. Remember from what we learned in our last meeting, you can rearrange people's cameras if you want to set the lineup to your liking. And then hide your self view after you're done.
Hunter, Mayor, I'm sorry. Could I get 1 minute of your time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rick, Hunter said that you're joining by phone. Are you on the line?
He won't be able to speak unless somebody's let him in.
Hey guys, it's Rick. I'm here.
Great, thanks. We'll let Hunter know when he's back. For those of you just joining us, we are waiting for the mayor and town manager to return to the call, so we'll just be a few more minutes.
Thanks, Jesse. I could hear you in the background. Apologies, everyone. As always, I think things always change these days. And I did hear, I think I heard that Councilmember Inkin was on. Great. Then with that and seeing we're a few minutes after 4, again, I apologize for being a little bit late, but I'd like to call to order the regular town council meeting for the town of Frisco, Colorado. Can I have the roll call, please?
Certainly. Mortensen.
Here.
Aronson.
Here.
Burley.
Here.
Fallon.
Here.
Held.
Here.
Inkin.
Here.
Sherburne.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Deborah. I appreciate that. I would like to, we do need to amend this afternoon and this evening's agenda for unfortunate scheduling conflict. A work session item number 3 this afternoon, our social equity training has to be pushed to a different date. So we will need to look into doing a special meeting for that. I apologize. It was a last minute scheduling issue there. So I think the best way to go about that is we will ask Brody to send a doodle poll to council to find a good date to reschedule that meeting. Nancy, is there anything else you need from us for that or anything you'd like to say?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I would like to say also that the consultants have joined us, though, for a moment. They would like to just say hello, introduce themselves, and sorry for the miscommunication, and they would like to reschedule. So I see that, Rita, maybe you could just have her say hello.
Great. Yeah, Rita, if you're able and ready, we'll welcome Rita. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Mortensen. And I understand how scheduling becomes a challenge for all of us. I'm joined by my director, Leon Andrews. He is also on the Zoom, and we both look forward to a possible special session with all of you. We're very excited to share the race, equity, and leadership content with you, have a real dialogue, and lean into the direction that Frisco has already indicated they want to take. So we're here. It has been a pleasure to work with both Nancy and Lily on this effort. And you let us know when we can have that special session, and we'll be sure to provide all the content.
Great, Rita. I appreciate that. Thank you. And yeah, we'll get back to you with the time that works for us and you, and looking forward to moving forward and moving the town forward. So I appreciate it.
Just send us some of that skiable snow and we'll be happy.
Once we're done with it, we'll send it.
Yeah, right. I hear you.
Thank you very much. With that, and my apologies to council for the agenda amendments. I'll move on to public comment. If there's anyone wishing to make a public comment this evening on anything that is not on the agenda, you may do so now. Please unmute yourself, raise your hand in the participant list, and please limit all comments to no longer than 3 minutes. Is there anyone wishing to make a public comment this afternoon? Deborah and Nancy, I assume you're also helping me track.
Yes, I am tracking all of that.
Seeing no.
May I just help one of our members of the public, Mr. Mansfield, to join us and asked to participate? And I think he wanted to make a comment during public comment. So this would be the time, if he does want to make a comment, that this is the time. Not sure he's aware.
He was on, Nancy.
There,
I'm here.
Mr. Mansfield, welcome. We can hear you. And please, if you can state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes. Welcome, Mr. Mansfield.
Sure. My name is Craig Mansfield. I did name.
And I just would like someone besides planning to look at it so that it could be subjective eyes looking at it saying, oh, this is, you know what, that kind of makes sense. That's pretty much it. I was going to follow up with the documentation and proof of all the other towns and cities and jurisdictions that they're actually less restrictive, and this is the most restrictive that I can find in Colorado. It looks like it was written by Summit County and then adopted by Frisco and adopted by Breckenridge. That's it. Just wanted to maybe get in the back of your mind, hey, let's look at that.
I appreciate that, and I will follow up with that. And I did see an email, I think, from you earlier today, so I will follow up, and I appreciate your comments.
Great, thank you.
Any other public comments this afternoon? Seeing no additional public comment, I will now close public comment and back to mayor and council comments. Council, anyone wishing to make a public comment, wishing to make a comment this afternoon to the public? I will start, and I will do my best to get through this, but I do want to just send my regards in regards to from the town to our friends in the town of Eagle for the tremendous loss they have experienced as a community in the recent avalanche fatalities. They have seen it. I cannot imagine what they're going through. And as you all know, through my professional work and my volunteer work on search and rescue, I have been a part of far too many avalanches on the both good and the bad side. And I know how devastating it is to the community, to the rescuers, to the towns they have been in, and the towns that have lost loved ones and true cherished community members. And I'd just like to extend my personal and the town of Frisco's condolences to Eagle and all that they're going through. And there are many hard days ahead, I know. And with that, I'd also like to maybe consider a donation from the town of Frisco to a charitable organization in memory of the work that those three men have done for their community. I'd be willing to see if council would support going that direction.
Hunter, I support that. And I'd like to just add that these guys were champions for sustainability in their communities. And it is a huge, huge, huge loss to the fight against climate change and the work that they're doing. There's a huge hole in their communities tonight, and I'm just devastated for them. So I would support a donation from the town of Frisco.
Thank you, Jesse. Andrew.
Hunter, sharing the, I didn't know any of them, but sharing the tragedy, you know, I think their tragedy should be utilized to further warn people that going out into the backcountry is a dangerous adventure or venture. So a contribution to CAIC or one of the other organizations that will help our community be more aware that it is, just because it's open doesn't mean it's safe. And so in their name, I would support our community becoming smarter, and in whatever recognition we as a council can give to their council just in support of what they must be going through, I'd support.
Thank you, Andrew. Melissa.
I fully support it. You know, they're part of our mountain community family, and you know, I know they're our wives and children that are left behind. So I definitely support a contribution on our behalf.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate that, you guys. Thank you. And Dan. Oh, yeah, thumbs up from Dan. Yeah, and I will reach out again. I've reached out to them, and I will reach out again, and I'll let you know if I hear back from them in any way we can additionally help as a town to support them through this. Additional council comments, and I've got confirmation. Rick Incan agrees, I believe. See. All right, seeing no additional council comments this afternoon, I'll move on to staff updates. And I believe.
Mayor and council, I'm not aware of any staff updates of items that are not on the agenda.
Great. Thank you very much. And with that, moving on, give me 1 second, sorry. All right, moving on to new business, and this will be agenda item number 1. This is a new distillery pub liquor license for Prost LLC, doing business as Pullman Distillery. This time I hereby call the public hearing to order. We are here today to conduct a public hearing for the consideration of a new distillery pub liquor license application located at 313 Main Street. The name of the applicant is Prost LLC, doing business as Pullman Distillery. All testimony will be under oath. The town clerk will swear in all making statements or asking questions other than council members. We will now hear the staff report, and I will turn it over to our town clerk and Deborah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. As prescribed by state statute, all new liquor license applications must first be submitted to a local licensing authority for approval. Town council has been provided with the application and supporting documentation and the preliminary findings. This application, as you indicated, is for a new distillery pub liquor license for Prost LLC, doing business as Pullman Distillery, located at 313 Main. Applicants Scott and David Pullman have filed the necessary paperwork in accordance with the Colorado Liquor Code. Additionally, notice of this application was published in the newspaper of general circulation on January 29th, as well as the building posted for 10 days prior to the hearing, pursuant to statutory requirements. Identigo and the Frisco Police Department have performed the necessary background and fingerprinting checks for the applicants and found them to be satisfactory. As a little bit of background, there is an existing liquor license in part of the location that is proposed. It is for the existing Prosit, which is a hotel and restaurant liquor license. This liquor license will replace that one at the point that there is a certificate of occupancy issued by our community development department. It replaces and expands the existing hotel and restaurant liquor license, changing it to a distillery pub liquor license. Distillery pub liquor licenses are allowed to do limited manufacturing, sales of bottles, and consumption on the premise. You're muted, Hunter.
Apologize. Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate that. I will now hear testimony from our police department, followed by questions by the applicant and council members. Chief, are you with us this afternoon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, both David and Scott Pullman have clean records and they're good to go.
Great. I appreciate that. At this time, Deborah, would you like to swear in Scott so we can open it up to
I'd be happy to. Scott, if you could raise your right hand and repeat after me. I say your name.
I, Scott Pullman,
Do solemnly swear and affirm,
do solemnly swear and affirm,
under penalty of perjury,
under penalty of perjury,
that the testimony I'm about to provide
that the testimony I'm about to provide
is accurate to the best of my knowledge.
is accurate to the best of my knowledge.
Our town attorney will have just 2 questions for you. You're muted, Thad.
How did you know? Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Pullman, just for the record, I see as part of your application materials that there is a survey or questionnaire that was circulated concerning the needs or desires of the community for an additional liquor license facility. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And can you tell me who distributed that? How were signatures collected on that survey?
Signatures were mainly collected by people coming into Prosit. We felt during the pandemic it was not very responsible to go out and about. So it was mainly people that came in to the establishment.
I would agree. Can you confirm that, to the best of your knowledge, everyone who signed that petition was 21 years of age or older at the time they signed the petition?
Yes, I can.
And can you also confirm that, to the best of your knowledge, everybody signing the petition was also, but I think that line should move north.
So Thad, if that line is incorrect, that is on me. I thought that the dotted line was the roof hang and that the property line was the correct location.
I'm seeking clarification. I'm not sure, but that's how I'm reading this map, because of the location of what's described as the existing railing on the southern line of what's the map shows as the existing beer garden. It's just off the map on this exhibit, but if you look at the same exhibit from the earlier application, that's what's being shown. Maybe the applicant can clear it up for us.
It would be, the boundary would be the fence line, yes.
Okay, so my suggestion would be that if the authority is inclined to approve this application, it just do so with a simple amendment that says the southernmost line on the permanently licensed premises is coterminous with the existing railing on the southern boundary of the beer garden.
Thank you, Thad, for clarifying that. I know that was a question from the original packet as well.
Yes.
While this diagram is up, is any other council need to see this, or can we go back to full screen? Okay, I think, Deborah, thank you. I think we don't need to share that any longer. No other council questions at this time. I will now ask if there are any persons in support of this application. If so, please raise your hand or unmute yourself, and we will swear you in to make a statement in support of the application before us. I'm seeing none. Is that correct, Nancy and Deborah? Are you seeing anyone?
I'm not seeing anybody, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Neither am I.
Then, is there anyone Is there anyone wishing to oppose this application at this time? Please raise your hand, unmute, turn your video on to be sworn in. I see no one in opposition of the application at hand. And given that, I will go back. Sorry, I'm reading my notes. Scott, I'll turn it back over to you to see if there's any closing statements you would like to make for council before I close the public hearing and go on to a council discussion.
No, not really. It's just we'd like to get this license approved. Of course, we won't, switch it over to the distillery pub license until construction's done and we have COs and all that. But we'd like to go ahead and get this approved so that we know that we can move forward with construction and ordering stills and that kind of stuff. So that's all.
At this time, I will close the public hearing and back to council discussion and perhaps a motion.
Just a quick question for Thad. Thad, can you reiterate that amendment that you need? Because we need to read the full staff report recommendation. Is that correct?
Yes, because of the findings that need to be in the record. So it would, for purposes of the record, you would make those findings, and then as a condition of approval, the southernmost boundary of the licensed area is to be moved north so that it is on the same line as the existing railing of the beer garden as shown on the plans.
Okay.
Anything close to that, I think will get us there. 'Cause
Okay.
The record, the minutes will reflect and the decision.
Perfect. I'll just pause in case there's any other council comments, but I can make the motion.
Seeing no council comments.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the issuance of a distillery pub liquor license for Prost LLC DBA Pullman Distillery located at 313 Main Street on the basis of the following findings. That the authority, 1, has reviewed the neighborhood under consideration and finds it to be the town of Frisco as a whole. 2, has considered the desires of the inhabitants of the neighborhood and finds that the inhabitants desire an additional establishment that serves liquor. 3, has reviewed the needs in the neighborhood for the outlet and finds that the needs in the neighborhood are not met by the existing outlets. 4, has reviewed the location of the proposed establishment and finds that it is not located within 250 feet of any school or college campus. 5, has reviewed the qualifications of the applicant and pursuant to the requirements of the Frisco Town Code and Colorado statutes, find the applicant to be qualified to obtain a distillery pub liquor license for Prost LLC DBA Pullman Distillery. With the conditional approval that, as per the town attorney's comments, the southernmost boundary line of the licensed area to be moved north, so it is coterminous with the railing of the beer garden as shown on the original plans in the council packet.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilmember Burley. Is there, Mayor Pro Tem Burley, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Sherburne. Any further discussion? Can you call the question, please?
Certainly. Aronson,
Yes.
Burley,
Yes.
Fallon,
Yes.
Held,
Yes.
Hinkin,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes. Thank you, Scott. We wish you the best of luck. Thanks for making our Main Street vibrant and a wonderful place. We appreciate it.
Thank you,
And
guys.
can't wait to toast to your new store and your new success and with your new spirit. So thank you and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Studies that will require discussions with Summit Stage and CDOT and those types of things once we get to a development application. So those types of topics are a little premature at a zoning level. The Planning Commission also asked a lot of questions about what the allowed uses could be on here. Given that this is a 3.8 acre site, under mixed use zoning, it's 14 units per acre of residential use allowed density. So that comes out to 53 units for the entirety of this site. Again, that's just the maximum density number per the code. But again, there has to be practical ability to construct such development. So the applicant has shared with us at a preliminary level, they're looking at approximately 37 units is their intent at this time. But again, we don't have a formal application. So they still need to meet lot coverage requirements, setback, landscaping requirements, parking requirements, all the other zoning parameters to ever get to those types of numbers. This zone district does allow density bonus should they ever choose to go more than 53 units. And that would have to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and authorized by them as well. The Planning Commission also discussed quite a bit about future redevelopment of the property and whether this property could be split given its size of almost 4 acres. And you've got a commercial office building and an intended residential use on the western part of the property. I would say there's no guarantees that that couldn't happen, but it's probably unlikely. The site has been developed as one site for zoning purposes. It has shared access. The applicant may be pursuing some shared parking agreements. And then from a developer's perspective, to split a lot like this in some configuration would create internal setbacks that would reduce the development potential of the site. It would also require additional landscaping requirements within the interior of the site. So there's some disincentives to them ever doing that. We could see this project down the road if Centura chose to be condominiumized or made commercial pads for subdivision. So you could get a subdivision of ownership, but not a true lot split from a zoning perspective. So I just want to highlight some of those things that Planning Commission discussed during their review of this application. The community plan, as well as the council strategic plan, both support this application. There is one recommendation in the community plan about protecting light industrial district. However, there are several other criteria in that, I guess, inclusive community and thriving economy strategies and recommendations that do support this, including encouraging redevelopment on Summit Boulevard, as well as encouraging workforce housing on Summit Boulevard. So in summary, staff and the Planning Commission are both recommending approval of this ordinance on first reading. I believe the applicant and the property owner have some representatives available if you have any questions for them, and I'm available if you have any questions for staff.
Great. Thank you, Bill. That was a great report and summary. I appreciate that. I would like to welcome both the applicants here, and I'd like to just to take a moment and introduce yourselves, and then we'll see if there's council questions for staff as we move forward. But please let the applicants introduce yourselves.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members. I'm Lee Boyles, CEO for St. Anthony Summit Medical Center.
Welcome, Lee. Sorry, you were on a different screen. I didn't even see your name on there. Oh, there you are. Welcome, Lee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else do we have joining us?
We have a couple folks.
Yes, Cindy Farnsworth. I'm the HR director at St. Anthony Summit Medical Center.
Welcome, Cindy. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
And my name is Ronnie Felucio. I'm an architect and planner, and my company's name is Polona Architects and Urbanists. Thanks for your consideration of our proposal for a zone map amendment for the Centura Health Center site. I've been working with the traditional neighborhood developers team for almost 20 years now. I was involved in the Wellington neighborhood in Breckenridge and the Lincoln Park neighborhood, as well as the Peak One neighborhood in your backyard. Tonight, it's my pleasure to represent Centura Health on this application. And as you see, I'm also joined by Centura's leadership team here, and they'll have an opportunity to speak further here in a moment. But I wanted to compliment Bill. He did a great job covering all the critical points of our proposal. And I really don't have much to add, but I do know that council has been having exciting conversations about housing, and most recently meetings with the Insight Collective about maintaining community culture post-pandemic. And that conclusions from these meetings reinforce the town's commitment to a diversity of housing options that serve your workforce. And on that note, Centura is really taking tremendous initiative to implement housing, and this application is the first step in doing so. So I'd like to turn it over to Lee, the CEO.
Yeah, thanks, Ronnie. I would just add, along with what Ronnie was saying, is it's been identified by our leadership team for a number of years now that we have to have some form of or better access to affordable workforce housing for our associates. this really also allows us to leverage that asset and the land that we have for the community. Like what was touched on, it's not only affordable housing for us, but units that we aren't going to occupy. We want those to be able to be available to other town employers, to other members of the community, and to keep those rates affordable. And we know that in order for us to continue our mission in delivering world-class care up here in Summit, we've really got to address this issue for us. We're no different than any other business in the community. And, we've missed out on lots of really top talented folks, from entry-level associates to nursing, folks that have absolutely wanted to come to Summit, but just couldn't because of housing constraints and issues. So really, looking forward to this project and moving this along and addressing not only our needs, but those of the community. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hi, it's Cindy again. I'm just going to chime in and add a little bit from a personnel or HR standpoint, just so you all can have relate to that person that we've been trying to recruit. I just want to share with you a few of the statistics here at St. Anthony Summit. Over the last 3 years, we've had over 24 candidates turn us down for positions because they can't find housing. We've had in the last 12 months about 50 people resign from our organization, and the majority of them referencing the fact that they can't afford to live in Summit County. So we want to be part of the solution. We want to partner with the town of Frisco and be part of living our mission, which our mission is to extend the healing ministry of Christ by caring for those who are ill and by nurturing the health of the people in our communities. This is a way for us to partner with all of you to help find solutions, not only for associates that are coming here to work at St. Anthony Summit, but for those in our community. So this is the first step, just by asking for this rezoning, where we can actually have the opportunity to put go to a mixed usage where we would be able to build affordable housing for us to make a difference in living out one of the many aspects of our mission here. I also wanted to let you know that we're not doing this just because we're brilliant or bright. We actually listen to and have been listening to our staff. We do engagement surveys 3 times a year, and the thing that comes up every time is what can you do to help us with housing? So just know that with our CEO, with the leadership at Centura as a whole, we have that backing, that strength behind us, where people know we have to make a difference. And by sharing the point that we are living into our mission, that's where we feel that the town of Frisco can be our partner and other organizations within the town of Frisco. And the last thing I want to say is just from a personal perspective, I was commuting over 140 miles a day for the first 6 months that I worked up here at St. Anthony Summit. And by the grace of the goodness of the town of Frisco, I landed in the Mary Ruth Project. I am so thankful every day to wake up and know that I have a place over my head and I'm not out there struggling to find housing. It's been a blessing. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, Lee, myself, and we also have our Director of Finance on tonight. Her name is Emily Ebert. We're here to answer questions.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you to all the team. Council, any specific questions for staff or from anyone from the Centura collection here? Jesse, please go ahead.
Thank you. Bill, given that there's a pretty significant utility facility across the street, the school road, are there any like utility easements or encumbrances around that property that would be challenged by increasing density there? And then similarly, because it's almost adjacent to, or it is adjacent to, close to the lake, are there any storm runoff considerations? I mean, going from light industrial to mixed use, from a utility and stormwater perspective, what do you see going on there?
So we did meet with the applicant at one of our DRC meetings, is what we call them. It's a development review committee. And that's when we bring in developers and property owners at a pre-application level, again, not a formal application. And we bring in town staff, including public works, building, planning, We also bring in the utilities. So sanitation district, Xcel Energy was there, fire district. So there was a lot of conversation about utilities. The substation does not have a overhead line easement or anything like that cutting through this property that would affect this development. I believe there's some stormwater drainage that goes through the site, and that was basically put underneath the existing driveway of the project, so it will not interfere with this development as well. So I don't believe there's going to be any utility conflicts, none that Xcel Energy has discussed or brought to our attention at least. There was discussion about transformer locations and a variety of other technical issues to accommodate the project. In terms of runoff to the lake, any development project, once we get to that stage, requires drainage plans and engineered analysis for stormwater runoff. There was a lot of discussion at our pre-application meeting about how to properly filter that water as it goes off-site on a Denver water property. So those are all the technical issues that we are bringing to the applicant's attention here early on, and they will be reviewed in detail once we get to a development application stage of the process.
Great, thank you, Bill. Other specific questions before we go on to public comment? Andrew, please.
Muting. I think it's great. The great part of this is it's private enterprise solving its own problem, which is housing. But I'm not concerned. I'm just curious. The term partnering with the town of Frisco, what's that mean?
Yeah, I can comment on that. I mean, I think for us, you know, maybe not necessarily a formal arrangement or anything with the town of Frisco, but more partnering with entities within the town of Frisco, I guess, is why we're, you know, maybe using that term. So, you know, like Bill had said, and Ronnie had mentioned, you know, we're looking at 37 units. We know we don't have a need for 37 units at this time. And if we can partner with the community of making those available to others, not just the hospital or Centura or St. Anthony Summit up here, that's what we want to do. So that's really more, you know, if there is workforce housing issues with town of Frisco, if there's workforce housing issues, obviously everywhere, we just want to
Hey, Bonnie, if you can hear me, do you want to try and unmute yourself right now?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Let me see if I can get video too.
Awesome. Yep, I see you.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Deb.
So we're good?
I think we're good. I'm gonna mute now.
Sherry, hold on a second. Kick back. Do you have anything that you need to share that I can help you with?
No.
Okay.
I was
Don,
gonna
are
say,
you good?
yeah, I was going to say there was some feedback when the two of you were just talking, so I'm not sure.
It was
if you
my
want to-
phone. I had been on the phone with Brody and I hadn't let her go until I knew I had Bonnie.
Gotcha. Okay, never mind.
Does your team need any help getting on?
No,
I
I
see
think
Eva.
well, there's Eva. Eva, do you want to do sound check real quick while we're waiting?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, I wanted to make sure you guys could hear me okay.
Yeah.
And I'll be sharing just a small PowerPoint during our presentation.
Great.
So we're all good there and I have internet, so that's great. It's been a little rough the last couple days with the snowfall. My internet's been spotty, so hopefully it'll hang in there.
Mine froze up 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, so.
Yep. All right. Hunter, are you back in town?
Yeah,
Yeah, you're back in town?
yep. I only snuck away for a long weekend.
Got it.
Yep. So
Hi, Andy.
it was a very good sneaking away.
Good.
I can tell you that Moab in the middle of winter is a delightful ghost town.
I love it there.
It was great. We sat and watched the ice flow down the river in one of the campgrounds on the river road, and we were the only people in it.
Is that Onion Creek that you were at?
We were on the riverside, but yeah, just down
Yeah.
from. All right, I see Dan.
I can answer you specifically. Does that help a little bit, Jesse?
It's the
Yeah, I mean, if the VIC if the operational cost is 250,000, I mean, that's 100% of the lodging tax. So I'm just wondering,
The lodging tax is about
How-
500, so it's about 50, almost 50.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. But you're saying copper helps fund it. I'm just wondering what else funds the VIC besides.
So they used to sell a lot of lift tickets and all of that. They're not doing very much of that anymore, but they do have some retail sales, and they have some ski pass sales, but the majority of it is from the lodging tax. And then Copper Mountain provides the 30,000.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is just, it wasn't included in the memo, but Nancy, I think maybe off the top of your head, you might know this. 2.35% or whatever this lodging tax is ridiculously low for communities like ours. Do you have examples of other communities and what their lodging tax rate is? Because we're out there looking for new money to fund new projects. Moving money around is not where it's going to be. It's in this 2.35%. So.
Yeah, sure. I have mentioned this to some council members, but I'll just put it out there on the record. If you want to go to California, you're going to be paying somewhere in resort communities around 14% on your lodging tax, sometimes as low as 10, 12%, but not generally, right? 12 to 14, 16% is what you're going to find. Colorado, this is more in line with Colorado, but maybe more along 5, 6%. You see a lot of lodging taxes. Bonnie, do you have some more local tax information potentially? Resort communities can charge a premium for the fact that you're in a resort community. This is a very, very low tax. Bonnie, do you have some local numbers? We haven't had those. I haven't seen one of those surveys in a while.
No, I haven't seen one either, so I'm not sure.
But
I know that when I visit someplace, and I'm sure you guys are the same, if you look at your bill when you stay someplace, the lodging tax are significantly higher than what we have here in Colorado, in particular Frisco.
I'm not trying to price gouge anybody coming to Frisco, but we have, one major hotel project on Main Street coming online. We have another proposed at the Baymont. Like we have an opportunity here just with new units coming online anyway. But even 1 or 2% looking at that will generate a decent amount of money. And the fact that it can go towards, our open space, trails programs, recreation, the kinds of things that were playgrounds. I mean, we just had this conversation at our last meeting. So I think that's important to keep in mind, and that we are not on par with our peers in this realm. We are far below what they are.
We did a calculation as to what it would take to generate a bit of money. So I don't know if Bonnie remembers what that was just a couple of weeks ago.
Well, the one that I was looking at was about $40,000 per person, but Nancy, you and I talked, and I think it's up to about 80,000. So every citizen, is that what you're talking about, Nancy?
No, remember I asked you, could you run some numbers to see what percentage would we have to increase it to get to another 500,000, I think?
We just have to double it.
Yeah,
We're
I think there was something else. But that's true. So that's true. That's an obvious number. The one thing I do want to point out to Mayor Pro Tem Burley's comment just now, and did we lose the mayor? I think we did.
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, okay. You're not. Oh, there you are. Okay. When you have a new tax or additional new tax or additional revenue, it is at that moment when you dedicate it to a specific thing or a project or a program that you do relieve the general fund of those costs. So as Jesse was just saying, like an open space, or do you want to set this amount for recreation? After it becomes part of the general fund, so to what Bonnie was saying earlier, if you wanted to shift money around between lodging or something else you're funding with lodging, that lodging could cover it, then it's not a direct savings because you're paying for it out of the general fund already.
Could I go back just a second, Jesse, to answer your question? So the lodging or the visitor information center receives about 230,000. That's just kind of an average. That's what we have estimated for 2020, and their expenses that we have budgeted for 2020, and we haven't finished 2020 yet. That's why I'm using those numbers. It's about 205. So that lodging tax that comes in does cover in most years, the operations for the Visitor Information Center.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I think I can safely say that I'm one of the people who asked for this bit of review, and the point kind of is this, the lodging tax can certainly do a lot more than it's doing if when needed to be, it can be more focused on whatever outcome that we're looking to do. But the way it's structured right now, that becomes problematic. There's it's projected to be a $570,000 fund balance in the information center part of this, right? So when I brought this up before, I think it was made very clear that there's some difficulty involved in saying, well, we want to take some of that $500,000 fund balance from the VIC and we want to invest in ICE, or we want to take that $500,000 from the VIC and we want to put it into Meadow Creek or something, or Pioneer Park or whatever, it doesn't matter. So if the point of the lodging tax, and I could certainly support at some point in the future, when some clearly defined goals, we go back to the tax-paying public who probably see the short-term rental, cohort as being ripe to be plucked. If we go back to them, it will be because we want to fund the PRA, or we want to fund ICE at the marina, or whatever that outcome is going to be. It'll be as a result of that conversation. But in the interim, when we look at the total, the $746,000 projected $746,000 fund balance, it's fractured among competing entities. When really, then at the start of the day, the ballot question said, look, just fund all this stuff. So to me, it doesn't make sense to even break it into different components when you could just fund all this stuff and then have a fund balance that you could apply whenever you need to whatever you want, as long as the other stuff was funded. So you could fund the VIC, you could fund recreation. Then you can have clever conversations about what special events you want, or how deep you want to go with recreational programs. And you don't have 4 different confusing fund balances to look at under lodging tax, when really they're all part and parcel of the same desired outcome for the community, which is, hey, let's use this money to fund these things. These things are clearly defined by the ballot issue. We don't need to break 45% to the VIC and build a fund balance that really we can't necessarily use. And please disabuse me of that if that's not correct. So I would come back to this and go, yeah, let's just have a lodging tax fund balance and have conversations about how and where it's going to be applied. Because we arbitrarily picked a number, and over the years, it's accrued a fund balance. Now, unless you just want to transfer fund balances to marketing or special events, or take a fund balance and move it somewhere else, let's just make it one fund balance and fund what we want with it, and not have this conflicting purposes within what's supposed to be one overarching community goal.
Councilmember Fallon, in the ballot question, ordinance 03-17 was also adopted by that ballot question, which is why I asked Bonnie to put those exact documents in there. And then the ordinance was later amended in 06 and then later again amended in 12. Those ordinances do set forth a percentage. You would have to at least, and I'll leave that to Thad, but you would have to amend the ordinance.
Yes.
To what extent? I'm not sure the limits.
Yes, and I think you could amend the ordinance so that council dealt with the allocation as part of its budgeting process every year. It's a matter of math. My vague recollection of this, given how long it was ago, was that over time and from time to time, previous councils wanted certainty as to those numbers and a long-term certainty for whatever reasons, but there's nothing magic about it. And it's not required by the ordinance that it's not required by the ballot question that you set the allocations by ordinance. What is required is that the council make those allocations. And my advice would be paper that trail carefully if you're not going to mandate it by ordinance. And that's all.
Well, I would just also, because the ballot question did adopt the ordinance. by
Right, no, you have to amend the ordinance, but my point is, no part of the ballot question or the ordinance that was adopted makes the council adopt that allocation from time to time within the ordinance. It just decided to do so.
You could amend the ordinance by saying, we're going to put it all in one big pot. That's fine. But I just want to.
We're going to distribute it out specifically in these categories by budgeting every year.
I just want to get it in the record. You have to amend the ordinance.
And if you're going to pay more tax, it becomes even more important because we can't anticipate. We've already seeing that we kind of spend in these areas. And then if we need to do more recreation, we go grab it from the general fund anyway. I think it would help us focus from the get-go in terms of course, we want to fund the VIC out of this. Makes sense. What else? And build it that way. And then if you're going to get 4.7% or 5.2%, wherever it's going to go, and that fund's going to grow to $1.8 million, you're not struggling with an information center that has unless of course you want to move it into, high rise somewhere. You don't have a visitor information center that has a $1.4 million budget balance that you can't figure out what to do with because it's tied to the VIC. So that's all I'm saying is I think we should create some more flexibility in this. We understand what we're supposed to allocate it to without a question, but the way it's allocated right now, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense and makes it problematic to focus it where we want it when we need it.
Thanks, Dan. Andrew.
So I agree with Dan. There's a big difference between what we're doing and a more simple method, meaning just we collect the tax and we spend the tax just like we do the rest of them within the category that's required. So this has been brought up because you're looking for impressions and thoughts. One of them is, I hope like heck when the budget amendment comes out in a couple of months that we're going to spend this money. We've got reserves sitting in every pocket of our existence. So we're strong. Why would we keep this kind of balance in this kind of fund? Spend it for the purpose it's been intended for, and we have reserves in other places. Also, after what I would call unextensive legal research, Frisco has our 2.35% tax. Breckenridge is at 3.4. Aspen is at 2.0 and Vail is at 1.4. I don't know if it's apples to apples, but when you do a quick search for Vail lodging tax, Aspen lodging tax, those are the numbers that come up. So once again, California is crazy.
I did say Colorado was very low and California is very high.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. Other thoughts, and I do appreciate Dan bringing this back up. I think it's actually a refresher not even a refresher. I think a conversation I've never had while on council. So it's timely, and I think looking at it, our budget review in March, it might be good to look at some of those fund balances and things that like the playground and other places.
So is there council direction to, when we return with the budget discussion, to bring back some potential draft ordinance that says we're going to put it in one pot? Do you want to do that next year? Do you want to look at options for spending the reserves, a portion of the reserves? We would never recommend spending them down to zero.
Thoughts? I see head nodding, and like Dan would be good to bring back an ordinance to say put it in one pot. And
yes, I understand.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I haven't heard from it.
I would like to throw my thing in there. It was designed this way to align. So that's why you have 4 divisions within this fund. And I know that it's kind of confusing to you. It's more of an accounting thing, but it was designed to offset so that we could track how much the VIC gets and how much they are spending. And that's why it's set up that way. I think that was council's intent at that time. I would like to see, rather than one pot, I guess it still is one pot, but I certainly would like to see the separation of the VIC so we can keep track of that. I know when council looked at this in 2012, this fund balance was nowhere near this, and some of the recreation, some of them were almost negative. That's why kind of things were shifted around. But I would maybe recommend like cutting it down to make 2 divisions and keep the VIC separate so that we can keep track of that. And every now and then they do have capital projects that they need to do there. There's other items that need to be done out of there. We could maybe transfer the restroom. That's another thing that I didn't think about, the restroom. Actually, I did, it's on the list, but transferring that restroom renovation to those things, I'd recommend. It's all still one pot. It's also one fund. It's just an accounting thing. I'm not sure where the confusion is coming from on that. Does that make sense or not?
Well, when I asked this question before, that's how I approached it, but I thought the response I got was, oh, you can't use the money out of that pocket for that other thing because it's allocated to this, even though the uses are nebulously defined at best. I mean, flowers and some of the stuff could easily come out of the general fund. So yeah, unless you want to introduce to me the criteria in each one of those funds by which those things became specifically allocated to that fund, fine, it'll give me some understanding. But I don't, when I look at the fund, when I look at the budget, Bonnie, in any department, it's pretty clear that I think I understand what you're saying. This line item, this number is for the VIC. All those numbers would be assigned to the VIC then. That would be easy to track. And if you needed to move capital dollars, then it's within the fund and you just allocate it to a capital project. But whatever, I'll leave that to you. You're certainly the expert. So, but right now, yeah, it's not clear why, even as it stands right now, we can't move money from fund to fund. But that's, I thought, what was explained to me when I asked this before.
Yes, that's correct. Councilmember Fallon, Ordinance 12-06, so adopted in 2012, sets forth, it's in the packet also, sets forth the amount of funding. And so you cannot, until you amend that ordinance, use the funding differently. But you can, and you have the authority always to amend the ordinance. And what we wanted to check, and what was really important, was to go back to the ballot question to find out if the ordinance was adopted through the ballot question. If it wasn't adopted through the ballot question, totally different, but it was. And so you must always be adopting an ordinance to set, basically you're amending that original ordinance, but you can do that. The stat said you can. So some good lawyer gave you that authority.
You can do it as to those aspects that the question says you can.
Correct. That's what I mean.
Which is the allocation of the monies to uses within those categories.
We agree. Presumptive reality there, but on the same time that
yes,
you don't have to set a percentage, but you do have to amend Ordinance 2012-06.
Just Jesse, I see that you want to jump in. I was looking for Dan. I think where I think I agree with you, but I think I'm also confused at the end goal. So like, is there an example that you're thinking about in this budget cycle that would have been easier to do? Like, would this have been a place where we could have just said, what's in the lodging tax fund? Let's pay for the finishing of Walter Byron Park from that because it meets those criteria set forth in the ballot question. Or what's not happening? I guess I can't figure out what's not happening with this money that you think we've missed or we could leverage better. Because I think I agree with the idea. I just think I'm missing what we haven't been able to utilize or take advantage of.
Well, it's becoming a chicken or the egg kind of a conversation, Hunter, I think to some degree. It's becoming a problem that is not a problem necessarily. It's becoming a salient feature of this fund that, that the cash is starting to accrue there. And, it's going to be part of a broader conversation in terms of what our goals are with marketing and investment in amenities. So yeah, when you've got $3,000 sitting in the special events fund, and you feel comfortable with the $40,000 that's spent for special events or marketing, there's not much of a conversation to be had. But when you look at this entire fund and $746,000 being projected to land there, as Andrew Aronson said, it should beg the conversation of, okay, how is this, how can this better be applied? And if it can't be applied en masse, and to Nancy's point, yeah, I don't advocate for spending this down to zero or negative balance, but it should invite a conversation about, what can we add to our constellation of amenities, for example, or how can this be applied to help kickstart the PRA plan, or you know, there's a number of conversations that you can have once you recognize that it doesn't all have to be spent on recreation just because it says so, because that's the portion of the fund that says recreation. So, you know, it should be the conversation you have every year when you're talking about what's coming up, either through capital investment through this fund or through ongoing investment in continuing programs. So that's where you land. That's the outcome. So it's at 746. Should that be 925? Because so there's, you know, like they, you know, it's not billions, but you know, $1 million here, $1 million there, $1,000. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. So, you know, you're pushing. You can be pushing $1 million in this fund. How can we apply it to the community's benefit? Pretty sure that the VIC doesn't need to be sitting on $500,000.
I appreciate it. That's good.
I would recommend a couple of things. Certainly, I agree, Dan. I think there's certainly things that we can move around. And I think if you look on page 3 of the staff memo, there are many things that we can transfer and that would free up money in the general fund or maybe the capital improvement fund. Some of those are fairly small. There's trails enhancements. I certainly think that fits into the lodging tax fund, the playground and improvements, public art projects. All of those things there, and those total about $380,000. Those could be transferred out of the capital improvement fund, paid for by the lodging tax fund, and free up $380,000 in the capital improvement fund for other projects. That would draw that fund balance down some. There are some other things that are in the general fund that could be transferred and free up money in the general fund that could be transferred. So I certainly think that could happen. I would make a recommendation though, that at this same time that we have reserves, we have required reserves for some of the other funds, the general fund, the water fund, the marina fund. I would recommend that council establish a reserve for this particular fund too. At this time when we're going through this change in this fund, I think that would be a safety measure.
So I think what we'll do then is bring back these recommendations when we bring back the budget amendment discussion in March, if council's good with that. And you'll have these list of things that we need to amend the budget for, things that are left unfunded, and you can make the decision at that time. And this will give you time to think about it. So it's about 6 weeks. We're bringing back that discussion. I think we're bringing it in second meeting in March.
I would also welcome any council suggestions of anything that you think that we're currently doing out of one of our other funds that would qualify under this fund. I may have missed something. There might be something that's obvious to you that wasn't to me. And I think Nancy and I would both appreciate your input if you can think of anything else that we might be looking at. What do you think, Nancy?
Jesse, did you want to?
Yeah, thanks. And it's more a clarifying question, but Andrew, thank you for your unofficial research. Nancy, when you cite the California lodging tax, is that the local lodging tax or is that the counties plus the state? Because when I just pulled up Breckenridge's again, right? And to Andrew's point, it's 3.4%, but then and I had this number of 12% in my head, but that's because their sales tax and accommodations include state tax, sales tax, county lodging tax, town lodging tax. And so that all adds up to 12%. And so when I want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples when we're talking about what California is doing.
Yes, I'd definitely rather bring you a detailed analysis so you can
Okay.
apples to apples, because Vanessa was just texting me about Vail's 4% plus 1.4 in marketing. Breck has the 3.4 plus 2.5. In California, it can be as high as 25% when you're calculating, like the town of Coronado, for example, has a resort fee and they have a special tax fee and they have a redevelopment fee. So if you want to look at apples to apples, what does it cost to stay in a hotel and adding all those taxes? We are happy to bring that because there's lots of reports about that. And I think our taxing consultant can even help us with that.
Well, I think, and I don't know that we need to go as far as California, but when Andrew points out that Vail is lower than what we are, that I was like, oh, that's actually not what I had in my head, because sometimes people cite a number that's a lot bigger because they're adding all of these other little, they're grouping accommodations and sales taxes together as a total percentage, and here we're not. So I just wanted to clarify my statements, and thank you for pointing that out. But maybe we could, if we do that analysis, let's just make sure we're comparing apples to apples.
Yes, we get this report. Cass does it. Also, we can get it from, like I said, our taxing consultant, because if you're going to consider how we compare to all the other taxes, you do want to look at, as best you can, the net to the visitor. When they go to a hotel, what are they paying? Because that's what the visitor thinks. I check out and I go, whoa, I never thought that price. That's the number we're looking for, right? They don't care that it goes to the tree people, to this people. They don't care. They just know that I thought I was getting a room at 200 and now it's 250. So we'll bring that back. Whatever we have handy, we won't spend a lot of, we'll find it. There are lots of reports.
Any other questions? Everybody good with that? Nancy's direction on that, Andrew?
Yeah, I think
I'm good with everything. One thought to Bonnie is, if I don't know if I'm talking pennies or real dollars, but if the Vic is now the booking agent for the marina, similar to them getting a commission from Copper for booking events, then we should be talking about or considering, should the marina be paying the Vic for being their reservation agent? Because somewhere in this report said that's become a substantial event.
The marina does pay an administrative fee, but it goes to the general fund, and so does the water fund. They both pay administrative fees to the general fund for handling all the billing and all that sort of stuff.
But yeah, that's a good, because that is an enterprise fund that should come back in to this fund, since the people in the fund are paying that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Great. Other discussion or questions? Be comfortable with that direction?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Oh, I lost my agenda. Excuse me. Up.
Going into
Well, as I said earlier, we've had to amend this evening's agenda. So work session item number 3 will not be taking us to 10 o'clock this evening. But I do want to say, since we are postponing that to another time, look for the email from Brody for scheduling for that special meeting to do the social equity training. Correct, Nancy? Is that?
Yes, I just want to say that I know council has indicated, a number of them, that special meetings are not their preferred meeting time. And so maybe, since it's on the agenda, you might want to talk for just a minute to talk about whether you want a special meeting or whether you want to add it to meeting. And there's been a lot of conversation about how important this training is. And I don't think there was clear understanding. This is a 6-hour training. So it's either 3 2-hour sessions or 2 3-hour sessions or special meetings. It's going to make any agenda longer. And
how does council feel? We could also just add the council meetings as scheduled to that doodle poll to see if that's where it falls to be the best possible time for other folks, knowing that it is an investment of time. I'm happy to make either happen. Andy Held, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, thanks. If we're gonna add these onto council meetings, I would suggest 3 2-hour chunks instead of the 2 3-hour on top. Our meetings run long typically anyway. And then I'm relatively available for a special meeting if that needs to happen.
Thanks, Andy. Other thoughts, Melissa?
Totally agree with that, Andy. I think, for this one, I generally like to keep things within the meeting, but I would personally be okay with going outside of, I think that it's really tough. We all have very different jobs and work-life balance. But personally, I'd be happy to do something like at 7:30 or 8 a.m. on a Friday morning. I mean, something where what I worry about is if we tag it onto a council meeting, we're all pretty exhausted. I mean, it's tough to, I think we really need to be fresh for this. We need to be engaged. And it's possible in a council meeting, but I'd be very open to a special meeting. And I don't think it needs to happen like bam, 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 like 3 weeks in a row. I think it, you know, we can spread it out if the consultant is open to it, so that it's, you know, one session a month for 3 months or something. But I think, you know, 3 hours at a council meeting is definitely a bit too long. So, but, oh, and I also wanted to say, I was communicating with Tamara, the county commissioner, and she wanted just to pass along, she wanted to be here tonight for that conversation. So I let her know that it was postponed, and we'll let her know when it's rescheduled. But so I just wanted to let you guys know that other people are following this, and it's a really important discussion.
Thanks, Melissa.
I can add to the doodle poll both regular meetings and we'll do like some preferences or something. Okay.
Good with everybody? Excellent. And I agree with Melissa. I think it is important. And I think I do have reservations about adding it to meetings just because it is something that is, I want to be engaged personally and not distracted by other town work. So I think we'll see where the poll takes us, and happy to keep this going, but it is important. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. Then with that, we are on to the consent agenda.
It's exciting. It's got solar on it. Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Burley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Fallon. Any discussion? Can you call the question, please?
Certainly. Fallon,
Yes.
Held,
Yes.
Incan,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
Aronson,
Yes.
Burley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Moving on to old business, this is agenda item number 4. This is the second reading of ordinance 21-02, an ordinance amending chapter 41 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Frisco concerning the Planning Commission by amending section 41-1 concerning officers' meetings, rules, and records to clarify provisions concerning terms for officers and scheduling of meetings. I will open up the public hearing and turn it over to Nancy. To Don. Sorry, Don.
Thank
Again,
you. I'm sorry.
the way the cameras pop up, I apologize, Don. It's all yours. Thank you.
No problem. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. This is second reading of an ordinance that was approved on first reading at the January 26th meeting. This is a very simple clarification to the to chapter 41 of the Code of Ordinance related to planning commissions and meeting and schedules and officers, just to make the code consistent with how the Planning Commission has been operating in the past couple of years. So with that, I'll take any questions that you may have. Again, it's very minor word changes.
Thank you, Don. Any questions for Don? Great. Then I'll open up for public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment this evening on this ordinance? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Back to council discussion and perhaps a motion.
Mayor, I would move that we approve on second reading on ordinance amending chapter 41 of, ordinance 21-02, an ordinance amending chapter 41 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Frisco concerning the Planning Commission by amending section 41-1 concerning officers, meetings, rules, and records to clarify provisions concerning terms for officers and scheduling of meetings.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Fallon. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Aronson, I believe. Any further discussion? Please call the question.
Held,
Yes.
Incan,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
Aronson,
Yes.
Burley,
Yes.
Fallon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 5. This is our continuing general discussion and action on the COVID-19 response and approval of resolution 21-05, a resolution of the Town of Frisco, Colorado, extending an economic relief program for businesses, directing the immediate implementation of the program in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency and authorizing the expenditures of funds for the program. I'll open up the public hearing, turn it over to staff and Nancy.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is on your agenda, this particular proposed resolution that's in your packet in red line form in response to the council's interest, though not decision or straight direction, to consider whether or not you want to extend the business grant program and expand the business grant program. So one, do you want to extend the date by which people could apply because it expired January 31st? Do you want to extend that date to a date yet to be decided? Although as in the drafted ordinance, we put in March 31st, you could pick any date. And do you want to expand it to include new businesses or any other businesses? As discussed in your last meeting, if you wanted to open this grant program up to new businesses, a new section was added to the ordinance that would allow businesses that opened between January 1st of 2020 and a date yet not decided. So opened in January, and they had revenues of less than $250,000, they'd be eligible to apply for a grant of about $2,500 or 2 times their rent, whichever is greater, and so on, as was mentioned at the last meeting. The reason the date is not decided or proposed as to they opened their business is because many of the grant programs said you had to open between January 1st and March. But in council's discussion, it was very unclear. And if you are going to allow this grant program to go to new businesses, really doesn't matter what day that they opened, if they opened in January and if they opened in 2020, unless you want to pick a specific date. Because there was some discussion, if you opened after April 1st of 2020, maybe it's all on you, that you opened, you knew what you were getting yourself into, kind of thing. So there's pretty much an exact replica of the business grant program for the new business grant program, and it's laid out in the resolution. So basically 2 questions before you. Do you want to extend the deadline by which folks can apply for the grant to March 31st or another date of your choosing? And do you want to expand the program to allow new businesses? One thing I will say, we did receive a couple of applications right after the deadline. I've also had questions from council as to how much we've granted out. So I just want to be specific with you. As of right now, we have granted out $215,000 in the Frisco business grants through this cycle. So of course we gave out the other $505,000 earlier in the year. 86,000, almost 87 for innovation grants. That was that whole new grant program to help businesses with all kinds of supplies and expenses. It has reimbursed businesses for all kinds of things, computers, point of sale, specific kinds of things they had to do, like for HVAC and all kinds of things. So total of $301,558. So the amount council had set aside was $500,000, so that leaves 199, just under 199,000 still available should you extend the program and should you expand it. And then lastly, I did want to also mention that we have received for the state/county/town combined grant, 93, okay, I'll explain again, 93,500 in requests. This was the grant program that all of the towns in the county got together and applied for the state for all of the leftover funding that the state had under the CARES Act. And they had till Sunday night to apply. They don't know, the businesses don't know how much they're going to get, because what we did as a county, all the towns in the county, we said, we're going to distribute the funds based on how many applications. Well, Breckenridge businesses turned in the most applications. Town of Frisco, the second most applications. Our number is about $93,500. Silverthorne and Dillon only had a couple of applications. So we're pretty confident that the maximum amount available is going to be granted. We won't know until the county tells us. We have a meeting on Friday to find out how much did everybody turn in, but $500,000 is what our grant from the state was. We think we'll be able to distribute everything in our town businesses that applied for. And then third, while you're still thinking about what you want to do, I wanted to let you know, and for the record, that the federal stimulus package draft language that's going around, I did send it to council, but I wanted to let it know for the public. We've gotten a hold of some of that early draft language. And right now, under Biden's stimulus plan, they're setting aside $25 billion for restaurants only, of which about a fifth of that will go to restaurants as defined in the language. Places that serve food, generally, was a better way to say that. For those kind of businesses that had revenue of less than $500,000, so very small businesses, they're really trying to target that industry that was hit hardest in the hospitality industry. So there's additional funding coming through that. There's also additional funding coming through the PPP loans. And of course, with one party in control of essentially both chambers and the White House, they're pretty confident that that package is going to get passed, and they expect a vote on those to be final and signed around early March. Well, there is funding coming through for targeted relief. So do you want to extend the deadline to apply, and do you want to expand this program?
Great. Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate that. Specific questions before we answer question number one, which is extending the date. Is there any clarification folks need? Thoughts? All right. How do people feel about extending the date, and are people good with the March 31st? Don't want to extend the date, Dan?
No, and I want to wrap up this round of funding. And if we do, I don't want it to go past another week. You know, if we've just gotten a couple new applications, we're really done. I want to wrap this round up, see what we have left reasonably, and then talk about next round. And if somebody didn't make this round, if there's an appetite to create another tier, then certainly those people could apply, because the tier is going to be more inclusive, not less inclusive. So if they didn't apply in time, chances are they're probably still going to be eligible. We're just trying to broaden it. But we need to end this round to see what we're dealing with, to see what we want to apply, if we want to apply to the next round, and what that, you know, who we're trying to reach out to and what that criteria is going to be. But extending it does not preclude those people from participating in another round. If we're going to help new businesses and also reach out to maybe other businesses, some other select businesses that select, I'm not picking winners or losers, but if we're going to identify or create a case for other businesses who have not been helped yet, but who were still affected negatively by the pandemic or locally economically, then we'll need another round. How much we're going to put into that is open for discussion, of course, or if we're going to do it at all. But again, unless we're not going to do anything else, there's no reason to extend the round. We can just end it and do the next thing.
Thanks, Dan. Other thoughts? Andy, jump in.
I'll play your devil's advocate. And why do more work? Why not just extend it till we're out of money? You know, we're looking to give this money out, and so, you know, why do we need to end it? You know, I'm aware of a couple businesses that, you know, have been attempting, you know, and for many reasons, you know, weren't able to make the deadline. You know, I'm for extending it.
Anyone else? Where folks? The door's open for both paths here.
Yeah, and I see your point. You know, it could certainly go that way. I guess my feeling was I wanted to see a finite end to this, and then let's create some space. Let's see how much money we have to deal with, and then move on. I mean, we're seeing some numbers here that probably are going to exceed any new round of funding that we decide to fund. So I certainly could see your point, and I don't have a problem with that. If you just want to layer this next thing on top of it and have it proceed concurrently, yeah, I can go with that. I thought we were going to be a lot tighter, frankly. But again, as has been pointed out to me in conversations, we're not obligated to spend what we have there. We've made a commitment to trying to help as many people we can with the resources that we have. At some point, the question has to be asked, is this the best way to benefit the community as a whole? And, you know, does this end? You know, does it end when we're out of money, or does it end when we say it ends and apply that money in another way that we see as beneficial, but a different avenue?
Can I, sorry.
Go ahead, Rick, and then Nancy will come back.
Okay, and I'm curious to hear, yeah, but Nancy had to say, thanks, fellas. If we're looking at these two questions, one is to extend it, and two is, are we going to expand it? If our goal, I'm not for spending money just because it's there, but if we have those few businesses that got their applications in and we're good to broaden it, to Andy's point, I don't see the point in creating any work when we can change it with an amendment and a date change.
Go ahead, Nancy. Thanks, Rick.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. So just to be clear, this program has ended. Council asked us at the last meeting to go ahead and let it expire and to come back with what we have left and who also applied and what their thoughts were about it, kind of thing. So that's what happened. It expired. Who applied was a couple of businesses missed the deadline. I will want to give a huge shout out again to Vanessa, the team. I know I'm going to start missing people, but Soleil and Carly and Dylan and Brody and Bonnie and all of us on the team, everybody, Diane. So a lot of outreach to businesses to make sure that they applied both for the state, county, town grant and also ours, so that we could answer that question. We have a few businesses who've said, yes, I am a new business and I really think I really do need help. And this is kind of why that criteria was put forth in the drafted resolution, because the council asked, tell us what need you still have out there. So there were a couple businesses new that are a need according to them and what they've suffered. And then there are a couple who missed the deadline, but quite a number didn't miss it because our team really reached out. So this program is over and it's 199,000 is what's left. So if you want to extend it, I'm just trying to make it easy. Here's the resolution. You can just pick a deadline and make it a little bit easier. And then if you want to expand it, it includes the new businesses. I hope that's more clear.
Yep. And I think that's kind of what Andy, you were getting at. Yeah. Melissa, did you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I am for, for the same reasons in our last time we discussed this, for those new businesses. I know you can't name names, but I would like to understand why people missed the deadline. I know I got a lot of questions from people like, who do I call? So hopefully they found, mostly pointed them to Vanessa. Thank you, Vanessa. So anyways, bottom line, I definitely would like to extend it and expand. Expand.
Okay.
Hunter, Mayor Mortensen, do you think
Yes.
I could address Melissa's question? I'm sorry, Councilmember Sherburne's question. I apologize. People miss deadlines for many reasons. And what I've really seen is people have an incredible overload. And I actually explained to a number of businesses that they had not applied for this when I called them.
Oh, wow.
One business that you sent to me, who I said, you haven't applied. Let me explain it to you again, because I really want you to apply.
Yeah.
And they got confused with the Summit County Innovation Grant. And then this Colorado Small Business Relief Grant came out, and there was just, people are stressed and overloaded, and they are missing deadlines for that reason. And I really feel for them. Like, reading comprehension has gone down a lot, I think, because of that.
Yeah.
Because we're so stressed and we have so much information in our heads. But there are at least 4 new businesses that are really hoping that council goes down this road, who had planned long before March 2020 to open. And there are a number of businesses that just fall into that category that just need a lot of help, and finance. Dylan, Soleil have been wonderful about helping them. Bill Gibson has helped along a lot of applications in that way. And they just need a little bit more help. And that's why they've missed this deadline. And you know what? Not everybody, we try to reach people 5 different ways. So at the 5th time, you should know this is happening. But some people have even unplugged to the level where they're not even connected 5 different ways.
And again,
Well, I just want to say thank you, Vanessa, for, I mean, you and the team have just been amazing and made it happen for a lot of these business owners. So I really can't thank you enough.
I mean, your goal as a council was to make sure that these businesses survive because they are vital to the character and culture of Frisco. And so we took that very seriously, and we want to keep doing that. And there are still some businesses that I know, without naming names, you would feel are integral to what is Frisco. That's as far as I'll go with advocating, but I do think it's some good stuff that you're considering.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from folks we haven't heard from?
What's the extension that's being considered?
I put March 31st in there, no particular reason, because council just likes to continue check in on things, but any date of council's choosing.
I'll weigh in, and I'd say I'm good with kind of what Melissa and Andy have said, that extend it. I'm fine with the March 31st date. Let's open it to those businesses that we've missed. Let's meet the goals of what Vanessa just so eloquently said about our need to really take care of the community and the ones who make us financially vibrant. And I think that's important. I think we can do that. Dan and then Andy.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Dan. And then Andy.
Right. So, and I'm good. That's fine. That's great. So I would say, though, if we're going to focus for a minute on new businesses, the guidelines that that Vanessa did put together, I do struggle with a bit. I think even if it's a new business, we need a better correlation between the one that's been suggested. You know, gross, just out of hand, doesn't really encapsulate whether a business is struggling or to what degree. And I think probably, you know, the same criteria that we used for businesses who could demonstrate something year over year, we can just apply to new businesses and say, I think easily, hey, show us whenever you started to December 31st, give us your P&L and show us, you know, we're looking for a metric for how you struggled. So easily it could be if it's negative net, easy. If it's negative net 10%, easy. It's the same criteria, just in reverse. So if you're going to be looking at a business that came out and it's, you know, up 15%, it's a new business and they're netting out at 15%, they don't need a check. All right. They you know, either their business model worked or they figured it out, whatever. If we're really looking at trying to not really be, again, overly assumptive about who we're helping, we can just say, look, show us that you are, and it could be 5% or less or 0% or less. A lot of people, once they're in that range, you've got owners who aren't even taking paychecks, right? So they're gonna be doing whatever they can just to break even. So if they're at 0%, you want to help them out. You know, they might even be at 5% just because the owners are not paying themselves. You know, so I would look at it from that standpoint and still look at, you know, find a metric that has to do with their performance and then walk it backwards. The other component would be if we want to try and expand it to businesses that were not necessarily directly affected by PHOs, I would like to, you know, talk about considering, you know, commercial core, go back to the original parameters of the original program, brick and mortar, commercial core, show us January 1st, December 31st, 15% of that loss, and then we can help you out because we've helped out the people who were directly impacted. Let's expand that boundary just a little bit, bring some more people into the fold. It doesn't have to be for the same amount of money. We could cap it at $2,000, cap it at $3,000, but I think it's time to look outside that line and see who we could bring in. So those are my 2 comments about new versus existing. If we're trying to look who we can incorporate into the expanded program.
Thanks, Dan. Nancy, I can let you address Dan and then Andy Who's next?
So Mayor, would it be okay to share my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so I just want to share the resolution so everybody could see it. It's in the packet and it's on page 197 in your packet. This is what was proposed and it came from the state. I give Vanessa and others credit for everything, but anyway, she's making sure that we know state came from it. What Dan is talking about is instead of having, I'm sorry, Councilmember Fallon, instead of having these categories of a certain amount of revenue or less and creating rent, is to coming up with more of a loss type analysis as we did here. The loss analysis comes from the previous year, and this was a lot of work actually for our staff to do, and it's okay because that's what we do. What I'm going to suggest, Councilmember Fallon, is the kind of analysis you're talking about out of a P&L is not a P&L can be typed up on a computer, and we asked businesses in the who lost revenue. We really led the way, and a lot of other towns have used what we've done as well, that it really had to be a loss based on what the town's taxes were. We've had people even try saying things like, no, I paid less. No, we're going to go with the taxes you paid last year. And we know what that number is. So to ask new businesses either to have to jump much harder through a hoop, and what they're going to do is they're going to have a P&L they typed up. It could be true, it might not be true, it's what they thought might be true, or a business plan. We're just trying to make this as similar to the businesses who already received grants based on revenue, because that's what all the others are based on, is revenue. The revenue loss, well, they don't really have a revenue loss. They have hoped for revenue that they didn't achieve, or they might have achieved it. And then it's already a little bit less equal, but it is somewhat fair as compared to the current grant. And I will say the federal legislation that came out today that I sent the draft language was so complicated for new businesses. They're paying someone to try to help businesses navigate that system. So I respectfully suggest that would be a very difficult proposition for us to try to figure out what they thought they were going to make. And everything would just be based on their word anyway. So we were trying to make it as similar to the current grant as possible. Sorry.
To be clear, P&L is just a net. It's not a projection. It's a performance. It's
right.
You made money you didn't. It's not a, you're not comparing it to anything else. They just say, this is what we did for the 8 months we were open. We lost $18,000. That's what it says. But I understand your point about who would produce the P&L.
Right.
Most people, run it through the books, but I got you.
Right.
Andy, go ahead.
Too difficult. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Probably just point of clarification, if it's their revenue generated over months or each month or something, it's still based off of their initial forecast of what they thought they were going to be able to make in a regular world, right? And it's got to be reasonable, no?
No, it's just it's just what it costs them to open their doors over a period of time. It's not compared to, you're not trying to defend their business model. You're just asking for their expenses to operate their business. So just like you and your business, if you want your monthly expenses, you can run your P&L at the bottom. It's just like your budget. So no, this is not a comparison thing against any projection. It's just the P&L. It's just profit versus loss. This is what it costs you to run your business for the month, for the year, for whatever period, reporting period you want.
Okay, so if Nancy's saying that that's not necessarily as easy or reasonable, then Nancy, we're saying that, two times rent or up to 2,500 or whatever we were doing, and they're just going to get it as it is. I mean, that doesn't give us a metric.
Right. There is no metric on loss. That is correct. The P&L is based on their income and expenses for the month. We did not ask any other business to do that. And so trying to create something as fair to the current business program. So for example, our concern is that some of the other businesses that have received grants and a lot of grants were not asked to do P&L, and they suggested that. And they actually suggested net loss would be very significant and much greater than the amount that we were suggesting and the grant is based on, which was a kind of a simple calculation as a revenue reduction. The revenue reduction is now what all the federal, state, local agencies are doing because it's as equal to every business as something can be. Net is very different. You simply say my payroll is $20,000 and you're done. It's a typed up number that you put into your P&L. And if you're going to base a grant on something that we can't measure, we can't verify your expenses at all. And we verified no expenses among any other grants for this very reason. People could just put in any net number they wanted to. So we were trying, so we did it on revenue, right? And that's what everyone's modeled it after. And not everyone modeled after us. It just means all the grants are modeled after that. So trying to find something that was as similar as possible, and the state came up with this similar idea. So it's where we got this from. It's revenue.
It's exactly the same way the state, well, it's very close to how the state dealt with it, but they did a little tiny bit different. But basically they just said, if you are a new business, we are just going to look at how much money you made in 2020. And that's what we're going to base it on. And we're not going to look at loss at all. We are just going to assume that there was a hardship that you did not anticipate because of COVID-19. I wish I were incredibly original and brilliant, but I stole this from the state.
You are incredibly original and you are super brilliant. But besides that, one other thing I wanted to say though is about, so one equalizer is this rent. So it's not a flat out grant. You know, what's really smart about the grant that we have is we did it 2 times rent. We did this on the version that's out right now and what we're proposing here. And the 2 times rent. So let's say you took in $1 million or more, you're most likely to be a bigger business and you're most likely to have greater expenses. You're most likely going to have greater rent than the small coffee shop that's taking in $250,000 or something. So that 2 times rent is a bit of an equalizer. And that's another reason we thought this was as equal to, similar to the grant we have right now. So that rent structure really helps equalize what otherwise could be a just cutting people check. We're not doing that. We're saying based on your rent, this is the maximum.
So we're kind of
I'm in support. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, our goal is to get this money out. You know, but in terms of that, and I'm happy if that's the agreed upon. The state came out with this, and I'm good with their imprimatur. That's fine. The issue would be if you had somebody that opened in February and was open for 11 months versus somebody who opened in November and was open for 1 month. You're going to have, but I mean, pick your inequality wherever you're going to have it. It's going to exist somewhere. If the goal is just to to get people out, then that's fine. I'm not going to sweat the details too much.
And Councilmember Fallon, the state actually, that is the thing for you to still decide. The state said you had to be a new business that opened between January 1 through March 26th.
I was going to have them think about that after. Like,
sorry. Okay, I'll be quiet now. I'm going to go.
Let's just get one at a time.
I think I've mentioned I'm in support. That's most of us. Anybody else want to weigh in on this direction? People are good with extending it to the date and expanding it to these groups kind of based on that grid that was Nancy shared from her screen in the red line document.
Okay, well then we will take Vanessa's question.
Because then we can move on to the cliffhanger question.
Yeah, it's in there also. I just briefly covered it and I knew it would be a little bit dicey. So we're suggesting, that new business is defined as someone who opened a new business between January 1st, 2020 and what date? So the state, as Vanessa was just going to say, I think it was March 31st, Vanessa, or March 1st or something like that.
March 26th.
Oh, that's right. Some weird date. Some council, when you had this discussion, you said, well, you know what? If you opened later in the summer, that's on you or something. And so we didn't put a date in there. So we thought you could have a fun conversation discussing what date should it be that they opened between January 1st and what?
Looks like Jesse has the answer for us. So
No, I have a question. Of the 4 or 5 that you've received that are new businesses, how many of them were in March? I mean, is this a moot point?
This one.
Yeah, I mean.
I'm opened in the summer.
But we might as well do it for everybody.
It would be 2. It would be 2, and the rest were August. Just a heads up, without.
A couple of them. They started before August, so they didn't. So one of them.
Yes.
One of them planned to open in March, and then a whole bunch of things happened, and they tried that they don't know. I don't know. Oh my gosh, should I open? I don't know. So they had their business license, they had their TI done, and they kind of kept waiting for the right day, and then, okay, they got a day. So it's not that they did nothing. I don't think we have any applications that did nothing, because I think I had one council who asked, what if they did some TIs or they got a building permit or something like that? But pretty much they all meet the idea that I don't know when they all got their business license, but.
The 2 that opened in August had been working on major construction on their new spaces.
I just don't see why we would have a 30-minute conversation on this to to do one business that was open in March. I mean, we might as well do it for 2020, and then after that, like, it's on you. I struggled with this one at first but now I'm just like, we have the funds available. They're, you know, we're not naming them here, but we know who they are. And I think they're important businesses for the community, and 4 of them is not going to break the bank.
Well, and I think as proposed, the drafted language addresses that if you started later in the year, your revenue is going to be less. So you're going to have a lesser grant than if you did start earlier. So you might have a greater loss. So I actually think it kind of hits all those points, not to advocate.
I would be comfortable with that because of that, for that reason.
Anytime in 2020 through December 31st, 2020.
I see. Andrew says yes. Andy says yes. Rick, Jesse shoulder shrugged. Melissa's in. So I think there's council support to go that
got the numbers. I struggle with this, but that's a good thing. This is a good problem to have.
Yep.
Yeah. So then if the council's interested in adopting this motion, I would say that if in doing so, you would adopt the resolution as proposed, but including the date in section 2 that new businesses were open between January 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. And that the date of extending the deadline is as proposed. So you only need to add the date of the new business through December 31st, 2020.
I'm going to make sure there's no one wishing to make public comment this evening, unless there's further questions. I know I got a little out of order because I'm used to this being an ongoing discussion and not an actual motion. I apologize, but is there any public comment in regards to this conversation in the proposed ordinance? Great. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Perhaps someone willing to make a motion.
Right.
Yep,
One question.
go ahead, please.
Is this motion just on this for new businesses? Or is this going to close the conversation for COVID? But the point is there a, thumbs up or thumbs down? Does anybody else have an appetite to expand the BAP to businesses not directly affected by PHOs that are not new businesses? Yes or no, up or down?
Yeah, I think I don't at this time, Dan, but I appreciate you asking that. And I'd see Andrew says he doesn't have, and Andy. So I think not at this time, if that's, thank you. And thank you for asking. I appreciate that. And is there a motion?
All right, I got this. Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve resolution 21-05, a resolution of the town of Frisco, Colorado, extending the economic relief program for businesses, directing the immediate implementation of the program in response to COVID-19 public health emergency, and authorizing the expenditure of funds for the program with the proposed program end date that's in the resolution, and with the new business section 2, with a date between January 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2020.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem
Second.
Burley, seconded by Councilmember Helzer. Any further discussion? Can you call the question, please?
Certainly. Inkin,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
Aronson. Andy, you were muted.
Quick on it. Yes.
Thank you. Burley,
Me too. Yes.
Fallon,
I'm a no.
Held.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Any other further COVID questions or concerns? I know Dan brought up a good one. If not, next item is to adjourn, I believe.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, you guys. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of the week. Stay well.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Deborah, I assume I'll get signature pages from you.
I'm going to send it to you tonight.